Every day for 6 months, her boss violated her, his hands groping every curve on her body, his weight pinning her against desks, his power silencing every scream she swallowed down. When he cornered her in his locked office and tore at her blouse, she closed her eyes and prayed for anyone to save her. Then the door exploded inward, splinters flying everywhere, and a man she'd only seen in shadows stood there with murder in his eyes. Her stalker, the one she'd been running from for months, now standing between her and her worst nightmare, breathing one deadly promise: touch her again and you die. Welcome to K-fairytales stories, besties. Please like, share, and subscribe. Jessica Adi had learned to make herself small. In the mornings, she chose clothes that hid her curves, long cardigans over loose blouses, skirts that fell past her knees. She walked with her shoulders hunched, her eyes on the floor, her entire body a silent apology for existing in a space where men like Director Choi believed women were theirs for the taking. The Seoul headquarters of Hansung Corporation rose 40 stories into the gray sky, all glass and steel and the illusion of prestige. Jessica worked on the 32nd floor in the marketing department, a mid-level position she'd fought hard to earn after moving from Lagos 3 years ago. Her desk sat in the corner, tucked behind a filing cabinet, a spot she'd requested specifically because it kept her out of sight. But Director Choi always found her anyway. It started 6 months ago, with compliments that felt like warnings. "You look beautiful today, Jessica. That color suits your skin. You should smile more." Then came the touches, casual at first, a hand on her shoulder that lingered too long, fingers brushing her waist as he passed behind her chair. When she tried to move away, he'd laugh like she'd told a joke. "Don't be so uptight," he'd say in Korean, his accent thick with entitlement. "I'm just being friendly." The other women in the office noticed but said nothing. Some looked at her with pity, others with something that looked like blame, as if Jessica had invited this attention by existing in a body that refused to apologize for its softness. Director Choi escalated slowly, testing her boundaries like a predator circling prey. He started calling her into his office for meetings that had no purpose, asking her to stay late to review documents that didn't need reviewing. His door would lock with a click that made her stomach turn. He'd stand too close, his breath hot on her neck, his hands finding reasons to touch her arm, her back, the curve of her hip. She tried reporting it once, filling out the anonymous complaint form that Human Resources promised would be handled with discretion. 2 days later, Director Choi called her into his office with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I heard someone's been spreading lies about me," he said, his voice soft and dangerous. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Jessica?" She learned quickly that there was no help coming. Director Choi had been with the company for 15 years. He played golf with the CEO. His wife was the daughter of a major shareholder. Jessica was replaceable, expendable, a foreign worker whose visa depended on her employment, so she endured. She let him touch her because fighting back meant losing everything. She swallowed her screams because screaming would only make him angrier. She died a little more each day and told herself it was survival. But someone was watching. She noticed him first about 2 months ago, a man in the coffee shop across from her apartment building, always sitting in the same corner booth with a newspaper he never seemed to read. His eyes would find her through the window, dark and intense, following her movements as she waited for her morning latte. At first, she thought it was coincidence. Seoul was a city of 10 million people. Seeing the same face twice meant nothing. But then she saw him again outside her office building during her lunch break, and again at the subway station she used every evening, and again outside the convenience store near her apartment at 11 at night. He never approached her, never spoke, just watched with an expression she couldn't read. Jessica started varying her routine, taking different routes home, shopping at different stores, leaving work at random times. It didn't matter. He always found her. The fear became a constant companion, a tight band around her chest that made breathing difficult. She was being violated at work and stalked outside of it, caught between 2 different kinds of danger with nowhere safe to run. She tried taking photos of him once, thinking she'd go to the police. But every time she lifted her phone, he'd disappear into the crowd like smoke, leaving her questioning whether she'd imagined him entirely. Her co-workers noticed her growing paranoia. "Are you okay?" her cubicle mate asked one afternoon, watching Jessica flinch at a sudden noise. "You seem on edge lately." "I'm fine," Jessica lied, the words automatic. Just tired. But she wasn't fine. She was unraveling, piece by piece, crushed between Director Choi's violation and her stalker's relentless attention. She started having nightmares where the two merged into one, where she was trapped in an endless loop of running and being caught, of screaming with no sound coming out. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in late November. The office had emptied early, most of the staff heading home before the forecasted snowstorm arrived. Jessica stayed late because Director Choi had asked her to, his request carrying the weight of a command she couldn't refuse. "Come to my office at 7, he'd said that morning, his hand sliding down her spine in a way that made her skin crawl. "I need your help with something important." She knew what that meant, knew that important was code for something else entirely. But what choice did she have? Refusing would mean questions she couldn't answer, consequences she couldn't afford. So at 7 o'clock, Jessica walked down the empty hallway to Director Choi's corner office, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. He was waiting for her, his jacket off, his tie loosened, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The door clicked shut behind her, and she heard the lock engage with a sound like a coffin closing. "Come here," he said, his voice thick with something that made her stomach turn. "Don't make me ask twice." Jessica's feet moved without her permission, carrying her across the expensive carpet to stand in front of his desk. Director Choi set down his glass and stood, moving around the desk with deliberate slowness. "You're so tense," he murmured, his hands landing on her shoulders, kneading in a mockery of massage. "You need to relax." His hands slid lower, over her collarbone, toward the buttons of her blouse. Jessica's mind screamed at her to move, to fight, to do something, but her body had learned helplessness, had been trained over 6 months to freeze and endure. When his fingers started working open her buttons, tears slipped down her cheeks in silent defeat. That's when the door exploded inward. The sound was deafening, wood splintering as the lock gave way under brutal force. Director Choi jerked back, his face draining of color. Jessica spun toward the doorway and saw him, her stalker. Up close, he was terrifying. Tall, easily 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled the doorway. His face was all sharp angles and harder edges, cheekbones that could cut glass, a jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. His eyes were the darkest she'd ever seen, black and bottomless and filled with a rage so pure it seemed to have physical weight. He wore all black, expensive clothes that fit like they'd been tailored for his body, and he moved into the room with the fluid grace of a predator who'd spotted prey. "Who the hell are you?" Director Choi demanded, his voice cracking slightly. "How did you get in here? Security will be here any second." The man didn't respond. His eyes were locked on Director Choi with an intensity that made the air feel electric. Jessica watched, frozen, as he crossed the room in 3 strides. His hand shot out, grabbing Director Choi by the throat and slamming him back against the wall with enough force to rattle the framed certificates hanging there. "Touch her again," the man said in Korean, his voice low and deadly calm, "and you die. It's not a threat, it's a promise." Director Choi clawed at the hand around his throat, his face turning red. The man held him effortlessly, his grip iron, his expression never changing from that terrifying calm. "Please," Director Choi gasped, his eyes bulging. "I don't know what she told you, but she's lying. She's been throwing herself at me for months. I was just trying to let her down gently." The man's grip tightened. "I've been watching," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "Every day for 2 months, I've watched you violate her. Watched her shrink and shake and die a little more. Watched you take pieces of her until there was almost nothing left." His free hand moved, and suddenly there was a knife, the blade catching the fluorescent light. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to resign. Tonight. You're going to liquidate your assets. You're going to disappear. And if I ever see you near her again, if I even hear that you've spoken her name, I will gut you like the pig you are and feed your remains to the Han River. Do you understand?" Director Choi nodded frantically, tears streaming down his face. The man released him, and he crumpled to the floor, coughing and gasping. Jessica stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what was happening. Her stalker had just saved her. The man who'd been following her for months had broken down a door and threatened murder to protect her. It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. The man turned to her, and his expression shifted. The rage melted into something softer, something that looked almost like tenderness. The knife disappeared back wherever he'd produced it from. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentle now, speaking in English with barely a trace of accent. "Did he hurt you?" Jessica couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only stare at this terrifying stranger who'd somehow become her savior. He stepped closer, slow and careful, like approaching a wounded animal. When his hand lifted toward her face, she flinched instinctively. He froze, pain flashing across his features. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. "I promise. I will never hurt you." His fingers, gentle as a whisper, touched the tears on her cheeks. Then he was shrugging out of his jacket, draping it around her shoulders. It swallowed her, warm from his body heat and smelling of expensive cologne and something darker, something like danger and safety mixed together. "We need to leave," he said, "before security arrives. Can you walk?" She managed a nod. He offered his hand, palm up, waiting for her to choose. Jessica looked at that hand, scarred along the knuckles, steady and strong, and made a decision that would change everything. She took it. His fingers closed around hers, firm but careful, and he led her out of the office, past the shattered door, down the hallway to the emergency stairs. They descended in silence, his body positioned between her and any potential threat, his hand never releasing hers. When they emerged into the lobby, the night security guard was nowhere to be seen. The man led her outside into the biting November cold, snowflakes just beginning to fall from the dark sky. A car waited at the curb, black and expensive and idling. He opened the door for her, helped her inside, then slid in beside her. The driver, another man in black, didn't say a word as they pulled away from the building. Jessica finally found her voice. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man turned to look at her, his dark eyes searching her face. "My name is Kang Min-ho," he said, "and I've been in love with you since the moment I saw you." The car drove through Seoul's glittering streets, snowflakes swirling in the headlights like tiny ghosts. Jessica's mind felt fractured, unable to process the past 15 minutes. She'd gone from being assaulted to being rescued to sitting in a luxury car next to a man who'd just confessed to loving her. A man who'd been stalking her. A man who'd threatened to commit murder for her. "You've been following me," she said, her voice shaking. "For months, watching me, terrifying me." "Yes," Kang Min-ho said simply, no shame in his voice. "I have." "Why?" "Because you needed someone to watch over you. Because I could see what was happening to you and couldn't look away. Because every time I saw that bastard touch you, I wanted to kill him." His hands clenched into fists. "Tonight, I almost did." Jessica pressed herself against the car door, as far from him as she could get in the confined space. "You're insane. You're a stalker. You terrified me." "I know," he said, his voice heavy with something that might have been regret. "And I'm sorry for the fear. But I'm not sorry for protecting you. Someone had to. No one asked you to." His eyes found hers, intense and unwavering. "You asked. Every day, with every flinch, every moment you made yourself smaller, every silent scream. You were begging someone to see what was happening to you. I saw, and I couldn't do nothing." The car turned into an underground parking garage, descending into depths that felt symbolic. Jessica's heart raced. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe," Min-ho said. "Somewhere he can never reach you." They stopped in front of a private elevator. Min-ho helped her out of the car, his hand on her elbow, steadying her when her legs threatened to give out. The elevator rose smoothly, the numbers climbing past 30, 40, 50. When the doors opened, they revealed a penthouse that made Director Choi's office look cheap. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, Seoul spread out below like a carpet of lights. The furniture was minimal but expensive, all clean lines and dark leather. Art that looked museum quality hung on the walls. "This is your home?" Jessica asked, her voice small. "One of them," Min-ho said. "You'll be safe here. No one can reach you without going through me. And trust me when I say no one wants to try." Jessica turned to face him, pulling his jacket tighter around herself. "I don't understand any of this. Who are you? What do you want from me?" Minho moved to the windows, his silhouette dark against the city lights. "What do I want?" he repeated, his voice quiet. "I want you to stop flinching. I want you to remember what it feels like to take up space without apologizing for it. I want to watch you become yourself again, whoever that was before he started breaking you." He turned back to her. "And I want you to let me protect you. Let me keep you safe while you heal. That's all." Jessica's laugh was bitter. "That's all? You've been stalking me for months. You broke down a door. You threatened to murder my boss. And now you want to lock me in a tower and pretend you're my savior?" "I'm not pretending anything," Minho said, his voice hardening. "I am your savior. Like it or not, accept it or not, I'm the only thing standing between you and him right now. And yes, I've been watching you, following you, learning everything about you. Your morning coffee order, caramel macchiato with extra foam, your favorite convenience store, the one on the corner near your apartment that stays open all night, the way you hum when you think no one's listening, the scar on your left hand from when you burned yourself cooking, the fact that you cry in the shower because you think the water will hide the sound." Jessica's breath caught. "You're a monster. Maybe," he said, moving closer. "But I'm your monster now, and I will burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you again." She should have been terrified. She was terrified, but beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something that felt dangerously like relief. For 6 months, she'd been alone with her violation, carrying the weight of it in silence. And now, someone knew. Someone had seen. Someone had chosen violence on her behalf when she'd been too broken to fight for herself. "You can't keep me here," she said, but the words lacked conviction. "I can," Minho replied, "but I won't. You're free to leave anytime you want. Walk out that door, go back to your apartment, pretend this night never happened. But we both know what waits for you out there. Director Choi won't accept what happened tonight. Men like him never do. He'll come after you. He'll destroy your reputation, your career, maybe your life. He has resources, connections, power. What do you have?" The question hung in the air, brutal in its honesty. Jessica had nothing. No family and soul, no real friends, no support system. She was alone and vulnerable and so very tired of fighting. "What do you want in exchange?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's always an exchange." "Nothing," Minho said, and the simplicity of it was somehow more terrifying than any demand could have been. "I want nothing from you except the chance to keep you safe. Stay here, rest, heal. And when you're ready, when you remember who you were before he broke you, then you can decide what comes next." He moved toward a hallway leading deeper into the penthouse. "There's a bedroom through there. Everything you need is already prepared. Clean clothes, toiletries, food in the kitchen. Make yourself at home. And Jessica," he paused, looking back at her, "lock your door if it makes you feel safer. I won't come near you unless you ask." Then he was gone, disappearing into a different part of the penthouse, leaving Jessica alone in the vast living room with the city glittering below and her entire life shattered behind her. She stood there for a long time, trying to decide what to do. Run, stay, scream, cry, sleep. In the end, exhaustion made the choice for her. She walked down the hallway to the bedroom he'd indicated, found a space that looked like it had been designed specifically for her. Soft neutrals, warm lighting, a bed that could fit 4 people, everything expensive and impersonal and safe. She locked the door, Minho's jacket still wrapped around her shoulders, and collapsed onto the bed. For the first time in 6 months, she fell asleep without crying. Jessica woke to sunlight streaming through windows she hadn't closed, and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. Director Choi's hands, the exploding door, Kang Min-ho's dark eyes promising murder. She sat up, her heart racing, and realized she was still wearing yesterday's clothes, still wrapped in Min-ho's jacket. The door was still locked. She'd slept through the entire night without nightmares. That alone felt like a miracle. After a moment's hesitation, She unlocked the door and ventured out. The penthouse looked different in daylight, less intimidating, almost welcoming. She found Min-ho in the kitchen, dressed casually in black pants and a white shirt, his sleeves rolled up. He was cooking something that smelled incredible. "Good morning," he said without turning around, as if her presence was expected and welcome. "Did you sleep well?" Jessica didn't answer, still trying to reconcile this domestic scene with the man who'd threatened murder last night. "Coffee's on the counter," he continued, gesturing with a spatula. "I didn't know how you'd take it, so I left everything out. And before you ask, yes, I know you usually drink it at the cafe across from your apartment, but I thought maybe today you'd prefer to stay in." He plated what looked like a traditional Korean breakfast, setting it on the counter with practiced ease. Then he finally turned to look at her. "How do you feel?" "Confused," Jessica admitted. "Scared, angry, grateful. I don't know what I feel." "That's fair," Min-ho said, pouring himself coffee. "You've been through hell. You're allowed to feel everything at once." He gestured to the food. "Eat. We can talk after." Jessica approached warily, sat on a stool at the counter, and picked at the food. It was delicious, which somehow made everything more surreal. A stalker who could cook, a kidnapper who asked permission, a monster who made breakfast. "I called your office this morning," Min-ho said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "Told them you wouldn't be coming in today, or tomorrow, or ever again, actually. I quit for you." Jessica's fork clattered against the plate. "You what?" "Your resignation was accepted, along with a very generous severance package. Director Choi also resigned, effective immediately. There's already rumors about why. Something about financial improprieties and inappropriate conduct. His reputation won't survive the week." He said all of this calmly, matter-of-factly, as if destroying a man's career was just another morning task. "You can't just..." Jessica started, then stopped. "You can't control my life like this. Can't I?" Min-ho's eyes met hers, dark and intense. "Jessica, you were being assaulted daily. You had no recourse, no protection, no way out. I gave you one. If that's control, then yes, I'm controlling your life. And I'll keep doing it until you're strong enough to take control back yourself." The words should have made her angry. Instead, they made her want to cry. Because he was right. She'd been helpless, trapped, drowning, and he'd pulled her out, even if his methods were insane. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now you decide," Min-ho said. "You can stay here as long as you need. Days, weeks, months. Or you can leave right now. I'll call you a car, give you money to start over somewhere else, anywhere else. I'll make sure Director Choi never finds you. The choice is yours." "Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why do you even care? You don't know me." Min-ho was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice low and intense. "8 months ago, I was in that cafe across from your apartment. Just another morning, another coffee, another day of running an empire I inherited but never wanted. Then you walked in." He paused, his eyes distant. "You were wearing a yellow dress. Your hair was loose around your shoulders. You were laughing on the phone with someone, your whole face lit up with joy. And when you smiled at the barista, when you said thank you in Korean with that accent, when you moved through the space like you belonged in the world, something in me just..." He made a gesture like something breaking. "Woke up. I'd been dead inside for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something, to need something, to see another person and think, that's what life looks like. That's what happiness looks like. I want to be near that." Jessica stared at him, unable to speak. "So I started coming back," Min-ho continued, "day after day, just to see you smile, just to watch you exist. And then one day, about 2 months ago, I saw him, saw the way you flinched when he touched you, saw the light go out of your eyes, saw you start to disappear." His hands clenched, and I couldn't just watch that happen. So I followed you, made sure you got home safe, watched over you, and every day I saw what he was doing to you. It took everything in me not to kill him. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" Jessica asked. "Why the stalking?" "Because you were terrified," Min-ho said simply. "You'd learned not to trust anyone. If I'd approached you like a normal person, you would have run. Or worse, you would have smiled and pretended everything was fine because that's what you'd been trained to do. So I stayed in the shadows, kept you safe from a distance, waited for the moment I could step in without making things worse. His eyes found hers. Last night was that moment. When I saw him lock that door, when I saw your face, I knew I couldn't wait anymore. So I didn't. This is insane, Jessica whispered. Everything about this is insane. Yes, Minho agreed. But you're alive. You're safe. And you never have to see him again. That's what matters. Jessica's phone, which had been in her pocket all night, suddenly buzzed. She pulled it out, saw Director Choi's name on the screen, and her entire body went cold. Minho noticed immediately. He plucked the phone from her trembling hands, read the message, and his expression turned to stone. "May I?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Minho typed rapidly, his fingers moving with precise violence. Then he showed her what he'd written. "This is Kang Minho. Jessica is under my protection now. Contact her again and I will destroy you. Not your career, not your reputation. You, personally and completely. This is your only warning." He hit send before she could protest. "Jessica," he said, his voice gentle despite the threat he'd just made. "You need to understand something. I'm not a good man. I've done things that would horrify you. I run a security company that operates in the shadows. I have resources most people can't imagine, and I will use every single one of them to keep you safe. That's not negotiable." "Who are you really?" Jessica asked. "Kang Minho," Minho said. "Heir to the Kang family fortune, CEO of Kang Security Solutions, which provides, let's call it specialized protection to people who can afford discretion. I'm powerful enough that men like your former boss are beneath my notice, and I'm dangerous enough that when I make threats, people believe them." He leaned forward, his intensity focused entirely on her. "And right now, all of that power, all of that danger, it's yours. Everything I am, everything I have, it's at your disposal. You just have to let me help you." Jessica's world had shifted so completely in the past 12 hours that she barely recognized it. Yesterday, she'd been drowning. Today, she had a monster offering to fight her battles. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Say you'll stay," Minho said quietly. "At least for a few days. Let me prove that I'm not just another threat. Let me show you what it feels like to be protected instead of violated." Against every instinct screaming at her to run, Jessica heard herself say, "Okay, I'll stay." Minho's entire expression transformed. The dangerous edge softened into something that looked almost vulnerable. "Thank you," he said, and the simple sincerity of it made her chest tight. Over the next few days, Jessica discovered that living with Kang Minho was nothing like she'd feared. He gave her space, respected her boundaries, treated her like something precious rather than something owned. In the mornings, she'd wake to find breakfast already prepared, coffee waiting, everything she might need thoughtfully provided. He'd leave for work around 9, heading to the Kang Security Solutions headquarters downtown, but would text her throughout the day. Just checking in, making sure you're okay. No pressure to respond. She did respond, though, slowly. Short messages at first. "I'm fine. Thank you for breakfast." Then longer ones. "I went out on the terrace today. The view is incredible." Then conversations. "What do you do at this security company? Is it legal?" His responses were honest, almost disarmingly so. "Mostly legal. We provide protection for people who need it. Sometimes that means bodyguards. Sometimes it means making problems disappear. I won't lie to you about what I am, Jessica, but I'll never let that darkness touch you." At night, he'd come home and cook dinner, the two of them eating at the massive dining table that felt too big for just 2 people. They'd talk, carefully at first, dancing around the reality of their situation. He told her about growing up as the only son of a father who built an empire through fear. She told him about Lagos, about the family she'd left behind to chase opportunity in Seoul, about how alone she'd felt until that loneliness became normal. By the 3rd day, Jessica realized she hadn't thought about Director Choi once. The constant anxiety that had lived in her chest for 6 months was gone, replaced by something she was afraid to name: safety, trust, maybe even the first fragile shoots of healing. On the fourth night, over dinner, Minho set down his chopsticks and looked at her with unusual seriousness. "I need to tell you something," he said, "about Director Choi." Jessica's stomach dropped. "What about him?" "He filed a police report," Minho said, "claiming I assaulted him, claiming I threatened his life. Technically, both are true. There might be an investigation." Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. "Will you be arrested?" "No," Minho said calmly. "I have lawyers who specialize in making problems like this disappear, and I have evidence that will bury him if he pushes this. Security footage from your office building showing every time he touched you inappropriately. Testimony from other women he's harassed. Financial records showing he's been embezzling from the company." He paused. "I started collecting it 2 months ago, just in case I ever needed leverage." "You've been building a case against him? For that long?" "I've been preparing to destroy him for that long," Minho corrected. "I just needed the right moment. Last night provided it." He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. "Jessica, if this goes to court, they might call you to testify. They might try to make you relive everything he did. I won't let that happen unless you want it to happen. Say the word and I'll make this all go away. Make him go away. Permanently." The implication hung heavy in the air. Jessica looked at this man who was offering to commit murder for her, who'd threatened it before and would clearly follow through if she asked. Part of her, a dark part she didn't want to acknowledge, wanted to say yes. "But I don't want you to kill him," she said finally. "I want him to face actual consequences. I want justice." "Then you'll have it," Minho promised. "I'll make sure of it." The investigation moved quickly. Within a week, Director Choi was arrested on multiple charges: embezzlement, sexual harassment, assault. The evidence Minho had compiled was airtight, impossible to refute. 3 other women came forward, telling stories that echoed Jessica's. The company that had protected Director Choi for so long turned on him instantly, distancing themselves, offering Jessica a formal apology and a settlement that would have set her up for years. She refused the money. She didn't want their guilt payment. She wanted acknowledgement that what happened to her was real, was wrong, was unforgivable. Through all of it, Minho was there. Not hovering, not controlling, just present. He sat beside her during police interviews, his hand available if she needed it. He arranged for a therapist, a woman who specialized in trauma, who helped Jessica start unpacking 6 months of violation. He gave her space when she needed solitude and company when loneliness threatened to drown her. One evening, 2 weeks after that first terrible night, Jessica found him on the terrace, staring out at the city. He looked tired in a way that seemed bone deep. She joined him at the railing, the November wind cold against her skin. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For everything you've done." "You don't need to thank me," Minho said. "I did what anyone should have done." "No," Jessica said firmly. "You did what no one else would do. You saw me when I was invisible. You protected me when I couldn't protect myself. You gave me a way out when I thought there wasn't one. That's not nothing." Minho turned to look at her, his dark eyes searching her face. "How are you really doing?" "Better," she admitted. "The nightmares are less frequent. I can breathe without that constant panic. I'm starting to remember what it felt like before." She paused. "But I'm also terrified." "Of what?" "Of this." She gestured between them. "Of whatever this is becoming. Of the fact that I'm starting to feel safe with you when I should probably still be terrified." "You should be terrified," Minho said honestly. "I'm not a safe person, Jessica. I've hurt people. I'll hurt more people if they threaten you. I'm possessive and controlling, and I want things I have no right to want. But..." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek. "I will never hurt you. That's the one thing I can promise absolutely. I will never be him." Jessica leaned into his touch without meaning to, her body making choices her mind hadn't approved yet. She was falling for her stalker, for the man who'd threatened murder on her behalf, for the monster who cooked her breakfast and gave her space and treated her like she was worth protecting. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Completely insane." "Yes," Minho agreed, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Does that change how you feel?" She looked up at him, this dangerous, beautiful man who'd saved her in the most violent way possible. No, she admitted. It doesn't. Something shifted in his expression, hope and hunger and desperate restraint all at once. Jessica, he said carefully, I need to tell you something, and you need to understand what it means. What? I'm in love with you. He said it simply, factually, like stating the weather. I have been since that first moment I saw you smile. And it's not the kind of love that goes away or fades or changes. It's the kind that consumes, that obsesses. That would tear the world apart to keep you safe. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. I want you. Not just sexually, though God knows I want that too. I want your mornings and your evenings and every moment in between. I want to watch you heal and grow and remember who you were. I want to be the person you turn to when you're scared or sad or happy. I want everything. Jessica's heart hammered against her ribs. I don't know if I can give you everything, she said honestly. I'm still broken, still healing, still figuring out who I am after everything that happened. I know, Minho said, and I'm not asking you to give me anything right now. I'm just telling you what I want, what I'm willing to wait for, what I'll protect until you're ready to decide if you want it too. What if I never want it? Then I'll live with that, he said. But I'll still keep you safe, still make sure you have everything you need, still love you from whatever distance you require. Because that's what love is, Jessica. It's not taking. It's giving everything and asking for nothing in return. His words broke something open inside her. She thought of the past 2 weeks, of waking up safe every morning, of coffee already made and boundaries respected and someone choosing violence on her behalf without asking her to be grateful for it. I'm not ready, she said carefully, for everything. For what you want, I need time. Take all the time you need, Minho said immediately. I'm not going anywhere, but, she continued, her voice shaking slightly, but maybe we could start somewhere. Something small. Like what? Like this, Jessica said, and stood on her toes and pressed her lips to his. For a moment, Minho went perfectly still, like he'd stopped breathing. Then his hands came up to frame her face with devastating gentleness, and he kissed her back. It wasn't soft, it wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry and full of 2 weeks of restraint finally breaking. His mouth moved against hers like he was trying to memorize the taste, like he couldn't believe this was real, like he'd been starving and she was sustenance. Jessica's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and somewhere in the back of her mind, she registered that she wasn't scared. For the first time in 6 months, a man was touching her and she wanted it, craved it, felt heat instead of terror spreading through her veins. Minho pulled back, breathing hard, his forehead resting against hers. Are you sure? He asked roughly. Because if we start this, if you let me have even a piece of you, I won't be able to let go. Good, Jessica said, surprised by her own certainty. Because I don't think I want you to. He made a sound low in his throat, something between a groan and a prayer, and kissed her again. This time was slower, deeper, his tongue sliding against hers in a way that made her knees weak. His hands stayed careful, one cupping her face, the other resting on her waist, touching but not grabbing, holding but not trapping. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Minho's eyes were dark with want. Inside, he said hoarsely. We should go inside before I forget how to be gentle. Jessica let him lead her back into the penthouse, his hand engulfing hers. They made it as far as the living room before she pulled him back to her, suddenly desperate to feel his weight, his heat, his presence. Minho picked her up effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her down the hallway. Not your room, she said against his mouth. Yours. Are you sure? I'm sure. He pushed open a door she hadn't been through before, revealing a bedroom that was somehow both luxurious and spare. Dark furniture, expensive sheets, the scent of him everywhere. He set her down beside the bed with exquisite care. Jessica, he said seriously, we can stop any time. You just have to say the word and I'll stop. I promise. I don't want to stop, she said. I want. She couldn't quite say it, so she showed him instead, pulling her shirt over her head, letting it drop to the floor. Minho's eyes darkened, traveling over her curves with an intensity that should have made her self-conscious. Instead, she felt powerful, "You're perfect," he breathed. "Every single part of you." Then his hands were on her, careful and reverent, tracing the curves he'd only watched from a distance. His touch was nothing like Director Choi's violations, nothing like the grabbing and taking and forcing. This was worship. This was asking permission with every caress. This was being seen and wanted and cherished all at once. They fell onto the bed together, a tangle of limbs and desperate touching. Minho's mouth found her neck, her collarbone, the sensitive skin behind her ear. Every kiss felt like a promise. Every touch felt like healing. Jessica let herself get lost in sensation, in the heat building between them, in the feeling of being desired rather than taken. When Minho's hand slid lower, finding the heat between her thighs, she gasped against his mouth. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Her body arched into his touch, months of fear and violation replaced by this building pleasure. He watched her face as he touched her, reading every expression, learning what made her gasp and moan and clutch at his shoulders. "This," he murmured against her skin. "This is what it's supposed to feel like. You, beautiful and wanting and in control, always in control." "Yes," Jessica breathed, her body straining toward release. "God, yes, Minho." And then she was there, breaking apart in his arms, crying out his name as waves of pleasure crashed through her. He held her through it, murmuring praise in Korean and English, telling her how beautiful she was, how perfect, how proud he was of her trust. When she could breathe again, Jessica looked up at him with new eyes. "Your turn," she said, reaching for the waistband of his pants. "Only if you want," Minho said, though his restraint was clearly costing him. "I need you to want this. Not just allow it, want it." "I want it," Jessica said firmly. "I want you. I want all of this." And the relief that crossed his face, the pure joy of being wanted in return, made her chest tight. They came together slowly, carefully, Minho watching her face the entire time, making sure she was okay, checking in with whispered questions. "Does this feel good? Am I hurting you? Do you want me to stop?" "Never stop," Jessica gasped, her body adjusting to him, accepting him, welcoming him. "Please, Minho, don't stop." He moved with deliberate control, fighting his own need to let her set the pace, to let her take what she wanted. And when she finally fell apart again, his name on her lips, he followed her over the edge with a groan that sounded like surrender. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on their skin, hearts gradually slowing. Minho's hand traced idle patterns on her back, mapping the landscape of her body with possessive tenderness. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Better than okay," Jessica admitted. "I didn't think—" She stopped. "What?" "I didn't think I'd ever feel safe like this again, with someone touching me, wanting me." She looked up at him. "Thank you for being patient, for making it good." "Jessica," Minho's voice was intense. "Being with you wasn't me being patient or making it good for you. This was everything I've wanted for months. This was being allowed to touch you, to love you, to show you what you mean to me. You have no idea how long I've wanted this." She smiled against his chest. "I might have some idea. You did stalk me for 2 months. And I'd do it again," he said without hesitation. "I'd do it all again if it meant getting to this moment, if it meant keeping you safe and earning your trust and being allowed to love you." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, Jessica's head on his chest, Minho's arms secure around her. For the first time in 6 months, neither of them had nightmares. The next morning, Jessica woke alone in Minho's bed. Panic flared for a second before she heard sounds from the kitchen, smelled coffee and something cooking. She pulled on his shirt from last night, the fabric swallowing her, and patted out to find him already dressed for work, making breakfast as if domesticity with her was the most natural thing in the world. "Good morning," he said, turning to look at her, and his entire expression softened. His shirt looked better on her than it ever had on him. "It was too big," Jessica said, tugging at the hem self-consciously. "My clothes are in the other room and I didn't want to," she trailed off. "It's perfect," Minho interrupted. "You're perfect. Come eat." Over breakfast, reality started creeping back in. The trial for Director Choi was set to begin in 3 days. Jessica would have to testify, would have to face him in a courtroom, would have to relive everything in front of strangers and lawyers and a judge who would decide if her violation mattered. "I'll be there," Minho said, reading her anxiety. "Every second. Right beside you if they'll let me, right outside if they won't. You won't face him alone. What if he gets away with it?" Jessica asked quietly. "What if they decide I'm lying, or that it wasn't that bad, or that I somehow asked for it? Then I'll destroy him another way," Minho said simply. "There are forms of justice that exist outside courtrooms, but it won't come to that. The evidence is solid. The other women's testimony is solid. You're solid." He reached across the table for her hand. "And you're not alone anymore. That's what you need to remember. You're not alone." The trial was everything Jessica had feared. Director Choi sat at the defense table looking wounded and wronged, playing the victim with practiced ease. His lawyer painted Jessica as a disgruntled employee who'd fabricated accusations out of spite, who'd seduced a troubled man into violence against an innocent boss. Jessica sat in the witness box and forced herself to tell the truth. Every touch, every violation, every moment she'd wanted to scream, but hadn't. She described 6 months of systematic abuse, while Director Choi stared at her with eyes that promised retribution. Through it all, Minho sat in the gallery, his presence a solid weight keeping her anchored. When she stumbled over words, when tears threatened, when her voice shook, she'd look at him and he'd mouth, "I'm here. You're safe. I'm here," the other women testified. 3 of them, each with their own stories, each with their own scars. Together, they painted a picture that was impossible to deny. Director Choi wasn't a man making mistakes, he was a predator who'd been enabled for years. The security footage Minho had compiled played on screens throughout the courtroom. There was no sound, but the images were damning enough. Director Choi's hands on her waist, her shoulder, her hip. Jessica's body language screaming discomfort. The way he'd cornered her in empty conference rooms. The way she'd tried to make herself smaller. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Director Choi would serve 8 years in prison, lose his professional license, be registered as a sex offender. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was something. It was acknowledgement. It was justice. Jessica walked out of the courthouse into brilliant winter sunlight, Minho's hand in hers, and felt like she could finally breathe fully. Over the next weeks, life found a new rhythm. Jessica moved officially into Minho's penthouse, her few belongings from her old apartment absorbed into his space until it became theirs. She started therapy twice a week, unpacking trauma with professional help. She began painting again, something she'd loved before Seoul and had abandoned somewhere along the way. Minho cleared out an entire room for her studio, filling it with supplies she hadn't asked for but desperately wanted. He'd come home from work and find her paint splattered and happy, and the look on his face would make her chest tight. "This," his expression said, "this is what I wanted to see. You, alive again." But Minho had enemies. Men who ran in his world, who saw weakness in happiness, who decided that loving someone was a vulnerability to exploit. Jessica first sensed trouble when Minho started coming home later, when his phone rang at odd hours with conversations he'd take in another room. When security around the building doubled. "What's happening?" she asked one night, finding him on the terrace, his shoulders tight with stress. "Just work," he said, but the lie sat heavy between them. "Minho," she pressed. "I'm not stupid. Something's wrong." His jaw tightened. "There's a problem with a business rival. Someone who thinks they can use you to get to me. Someone who doesn't understand that touching you means death." Her stomach dropped. "Am I in danger?" "Not while I'm breathing," Minho said. "I've tripled security. No one gets near you without going through my men. Through me. But," she could hear the strain in his voice, "but I need you to be careful. Don't go anywhere alone. Trust the guards I've assigned you. And if anything feels wrong, you call me immediately." Jessica wanted to argue, to insist she could take care of herself. But she'd learned that Minho's paranoia came from experience, from a world where threats were real and violence was common. So she nodded, agreed, let herself be protected. The attack came anyway. Jessica was at her therapy appointment, Minho's guards stationed outside, when 3 men posing as facility maintenance entered the building. They moved with professional precision, eliminating the guards in seconds. By the time Jessica heard the commotion and tried to run, they were already in the office. Her therapist screamed. One of the men knocked her unconscious. Jessica tried to fight, used the self-defense moves Minho had insisted she learn. She got one good hit in, heard a satisfying crunch of bone. But there were 3 of them, and one of her, and within seconds she was subdued, a cloth pressed over her mouth and nose, chemicals making the world go gray and then black. She woke in a warehouse, hands zip-tied behind her back, her head pounding. A man sat across from her, middle-aged and expensive-looking, watching her with cold calculation. "Miss Ade," he said in accented English. "I apologize for the crude methods, but Kang Min-ho has something I want, and you're the key to getting it." Jessica's training kicked in. Stay calm, don't show fear, buy time. Min-ho will come, he always comes. "Who are you?" she managed, her voice rough. "Lee Jun-sok," the man said. "Min-ho and I have a disagreement about certain business territories. I've tried negotiating. He's been unreasonable, so I've decided to apply pressure." He gestured to her. "You're the pressure. You're going to call him. Tell him that if he doesn't withdraw from my territories, you'll be returned to him in pieces." Fear lanced through her, but Jessica forced herself to meet his eyes. "You don't know Min-ho very well," she said. "He doesn't negotiate with terrorists, and killing me won't make him back down. It'll just make him destroy you completely." Lee Jun-suk smiled. "We'll see." He handed her a phone. "Call him." Hands still tied behind her back, Jessica took the phone awkwardly. Her fingers shook as she dialed Minho's number. He answered on the first ring. "Jessica." His voice was tight with controlled panic. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she said, then heard Lee Jun-sok cock a gun behind her. "I'm with Lee Jun-sok. He wants you to withdraw from some territories or he'll—" She couldn't quite say it. "Or he'll hurt me." The silence on the other end of the phone was terrible. Jessica could hear Min-ho breathing, could imagine the rage and fear warring in his expression. "Put him on speaker," Min-ho said finally. Jessica complied. Min-ho's voice filled the warehouse, cold and absolutely certain. "Lee Jun-suk, I'm going to say this once. Release her unharmed in the next 10 minutes, and your death will be quick. Hurt her in any way, and I will spend the rest of your life making you wish you'd never been born. Your family, your empire, everyone you've ever cared about, I will dismantle it all while you watch. And then, when you're completely alone and broken, I will kill you slowly enough that you beg for death long before it comes." Lee Jun-sok laughed. "Big words from a man who has no idea where we are. I have 6 satellite feeds showing exactly where you are," Min-ho said. "I have 20 men surrounding the building right now, and I'm about 3 minutes away personally. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to put down that gun, walk away, and pray that I'm feeling merciful when I catch up to you eventually. Or you're going to try to hurt her, and I'll come through that door right now and show you exactly what I'm capable of. The choice is yours." "You're bluffing," Lee Jun-suk said, but doubt crept into his voice. "Test me," Min-ho invited. "Hurt her and find out how much I'm bluffing." The warehouse doors exploded inward. Men in tactical gear poured in from multiple entrances, moving with military precision. Lee Jun-suk barely had time to raise his weapon before he was disarmed and on the ground, a boot on his neck. Min-ho entered last, moving through the chaos with deadly calm. His eyes found Jessica immediately, scanning her for injuries. When he saw the zip ties, the way she was shaking despite her brave front, something dangerous flashed across his face. He knelt beside her, cutting the zip ties with a knife that appeared from nowhere. His hands were gentle as he checked her over, tilting her face, examining her wrists, making sure she was intact. "Did he touch you?" Min-ho asked quietly. "Did any of them hurt you?" "No," Jessica said. I'm okay. Min-ho pulled her against him, his arms coming around her with desperate strength. For a moment, the dangerous crime lord disappeared, replaced by a man who'd been terrified of losing something precious. Then the moment passed. He stood, helped Jessica to her feet, and turned to where Lee Jun-sok was being held on his knees. "Take her to the car," Min-ho ordered one of his men. "Make sure she's comfortable. I'll be there in a few minutes." I'm staying, Jessica said. Minho, I'm staying. You don't want to see this, Minho said, his voice warning. You don't want to see what I become when someone hurts you. I do, Jessica insisted. I need to see. I need to understand who you really are. Minho searched her face, then nodded slowly. He approached Lee Jun-suk with measured steps. What he did next was brutal, efficient, terrifying. Jessica watched as Minho systematically destroyed Lee Jun-suk, not with uncontrolled rage, but with cold precision. Every hit was calculated. Every question was asked in that deadly, calm tone. Every answer that Minho didn't like was punished methodically. By the time it was over, Lee Jun-suk was broken, physically and mentally. Minho had extracted everything he needed, every name, every location, every detail of the rival organization. Then he stood, looked down at the man who'd tried to use Jessica as leverage, and said one simple word to his men: disappear him. They dragged Lee Jun-suk away. Minho turned back to Jessica, blood on his knuckles, his shirt torn, his eyes still carrying that cold violence. Now you know, he said quietly. This is who I am. This is what I do to protect what's mine. Jessica should have been horrified, should have run, should have seen a monster. Instead, she saw a man who'd moved heaven and earth to save her, who'd promised violence on her behalf and delivered it, who'd become something dark and terrible because someone had threatened her. I love you, she said. The words surprised them both. Minho's entire expression cracked open. Say that again. I love you, Jessica repeated. All of you. Even the parts that scare me. Even the monster you become when I'm threatened. I love you, Kang Minho. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and kissed her, hard and desperate and claiming. His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I will spend the rest of my life earning this, he said against her mouth. Earning you, making sure you never regret choosing me. I already don't, Jessica said, and I never will. They left the warehouse together, Minho's arm around her shoulders, Jessica leaning into his strength. In the car, she finally let herself shake, let the fear she'd been holding back crash over her. Minho held her through it, murmuring promises in Korean and English. I've got you. You're safe. No one will ever hurt you again. I promise. I promise. I promise. The next weeks were about cleanup. Minho's men dismantled Lee Jun-suk's organization with surgical precision. Other rivals who might have had similar ideas reconsidered when they saw what happened to those who threatened Kang Minho's woman. Jessica became something legendary in the underworld. Untouchable, protected by the most dangerous man in Seoul. But to Minho, she was just Jessica, the woman who saw past his violence to the man underneath, who chose him despite everything, who loved him not, in spite of his darkness but with full knowledge of it. He proved his love in countless ways, clearing his schedule to be home for dinner, learning to cook Nigerian food so she could taste home, installing a bigger studio when her painting took off, sitting through therapy sessions when she needed support, never once pressuring her for more than she was ready to give. 6 months after Director Choi's conviction, a year after that terrible night in the office, Minho came home to find Jessica standing in her studio, looking at a painting she'd just finished. It was them. Minho dark and dangerous, Jessica bright and soft, somehow fitting together in ways that shouldn't work but did. It's us, she said simply. Everything we are. He studied it for a long time. Then he turned to her, dropped to one knee, and pulled out a ring. Jessica Ade, he said. You walked into my life broken and scared, and somehow you saved me instead of the other way around. You made me want to be better, made me believe I could be more than just violence and power, made me human again. He opened the box, revealing a ring that was beautiful and perfect and exactly her style. Marry me. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you and loving you and proving every day that choosing me wasn't a mistake. Tears streamed down Jessica's face. Yes, she said. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Minho slipped the ring on her finger, stood, and kissed her with all the desperate relief of a man who just won everything. They were married 3 months later in a ceremony that blended both their cultures. Jessica's family flew in from Lagos, overwhelmed but accepting. Minho's few friends from the legitimate world attended, alongside the dangerous men he worked with who treated Jessica with the reverence usually reserved for royalty. "I'm not letting you go," Minho whispered during their first dance. "Not ever." "Good," Jessica said, "because I'm not leaving." 1 year later, they stood in that same studio, Jessica's hand on her swollen belly, Minho's arms around her from behind. "Our daughter," he murmured against her ear, his hand covering hers. "She's going to be so loved, so protected, so cherished. She'll never know what it feels like to be unsafe, because she'll have you as her father," Jessica said, "and you'll teach her to be strong. And because she'll have you as her mother," Minho corrected, "you'll teach her to be brave. That survival isn't just about protecting yourself, it's about building a life worth living afterward." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the sunset over Seoul, two broken people who'd somehow built something whole together. Jessica thought back to that night in Director Choi's office, to the moment she'd closed her eyes and prayed for salvation. She'd never imagined it would come in the form of a dangerous man who'd been watching her from the shadows, who'd threatened murder on her behalf, who'd loved her fierce enough to destroy anyone who tried to hurt her. But here she was, safe, loved, healing, building a future with a man who'd started as her stalker and become her savior, her protector, her partner, her everything. "Touch her again and you die," Minho had promised that night. And he'd kept that promise, had built an entire life around keeping her safe. Jessica placed her hand over Minho's on her stomach, feeling their daughter move beneath their joined palms. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything, for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me." "I'd do it all again," Minho said. "Every moment, every choice, every act of violence, I'd do it all again to get to this moment, to get to you." She turned in his arms, rose on her toes, and kissed him with all the love and gratitude and fierce devotion she felt. When they broke apart, both smiling, the last light of sunset painting them gold, Jessica knew one absolute truth. She'd been saved by a monster, and she'd never been more grateful for anything in her life.